What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another vlog post with Nevs. Today I'm going to be answering the questions that you guys gave me like 2 months ago. I apologize for how long it took me to get this out. I was having a lot of issues with my camera not capturing properly. So I've decided to just drop the video for now, and we're just going to do it straight commentary style. And I'm just going to run through your questions here. I'm going to put the question up on the display so you guys can see what it is, and I'm going to answer it. So here we go. David Pope 683 asks, "Hey, will you do a Let's Play of Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2? Absolutely not. The Force Unleashed 2 is one of the worst games that I've played in this modern generation of games. It was really unfortunate because I was really excited about it because I love the first one. But I believe one of the lead guys on the team producing that game actually left right before the game came out. And that kind of tells you a little something about the game, doesn't it? It was only a 4-hour game, and it was just absolutely horrible. There were only a few different enemy types, only maybe 1 or 2 interesting boss fights. It just completely paled in comparison to the first game, and I really don't ever want to see it again. Altair 2460 asks, "Would you consider playing a Castlevania game?" Well, I've actually played a little bit of some of the Castlevania games, not a whole lot of them. I've never actually finished any of them. I'm not terribly good at them, so I highly doubt that I would ever actually do an LP of them. I'm not a big fan of side-scrolling type games. Also, I'm not a big fan of platforming type games, and there seem to be a lot of platforming in that. I don't know. I've never been very good at those types of games, so I wouldn't expect one. I'm sorry. James Galvin asks, "Do you think you will do Kingdom Hearts 3? If the game ever comes out, I will most likely play it. I love the other 2 Kingdom Hearts games, the main actual numbered games. I love those, and I definitely plan to play a 3rd one if it ever comes out." Scarlet Silverflame asks, "What PS2 emulator did you use when playing Kingdom Hearts?" So I actually get asked this question all the time, and I'll go ahead and set the record straight. It's the PCSX2 emulator. You could just Google that and you'll find it. I thought I talked about it in the Kingdom Hearts LPs, but maybe I didn't, so there you go. WolfDude1 asks, "Dead Space would have been a great game to see you do co-op, because I heard and saw in a few trailers that it would just add so much more into the story and just add wonders to the immersion, and so why didn't you invite Porkins?" Well, I originally was going to do the game co-op, but I decided not to because I feel like playing a horror game in co-op usually detracts from the scariness of the game. That's not to say a game can't be scary co-op, but I have yet to play one that I thought was actually that great. And I actually would have played the game with Porkins, except for the fact that Porkins doesn't have a gaming PC at the moment. I think he plans to get one in the future, and then I'll be able to do more LPs with him, but we both live in different areas, and we both work on different schedules now, so it's pretty difficult to coordinate a cooperative Let's Play between he and I. But I hope to be able to do more with him in the future, because I love doing LPs with that guy. George Christopher asks, "When are you going to play Alan Wake's American Nightmare?" Perhaps very soon. I'd actually forgotten all about the game up until I read your comment. It wasn't a particularly memorable experience, though. You pretty much just kind of repeat the same process over again 3 times. But that's not to say it wasn't a fun experience. I can tell that the developers had a lot of fun with it. They incorporated lots of interesting weapons, some new enemy types, and you can really just tell that the developers just had a blast making that DLC, and that's definitely what I would say people should be doing when they make DLC. So, in conclusion, perhaps I will do an LP of it very soon. I really did enjoy the Alan Wake series. I love the game engine. So yeah, you can expect that sometime in the future. Sonic Halo 101 asks, "Will you ever stop being a dick? No offense, Nevs, but you tend to be a jerk. I think you should ease up on doing dark missions, and also you should add a BIOS to your Pokemon LP." Well, to answer your first question, typically I do dark side missions because I like to separate my LPs from the crowd just a bit. Most of the people, when they're playing through a game for the first time, they'll play through on the good side. So if I'm LPing a game that just came out, I'll typically do the a darker side, just to be able to separate myself a little bit from the tons of people doing Let's Plays these days. Also, since I'm such a nice guy in real life, I find it's much more entertaining to play, I don't know, to be a dick in a video game, because I can, you know? Like, I'm not hurting anybody by being a dick in a video game, it's just a video game. So, hopefully that'll answer your first question. And I'm not really sure what you mean by the second part to your question by adding a BIOS. I know some people said they wanted me to add the characters to the sides of my screen, but I found that would be a little too tedious to do because I'm constantly changing up my party. So I wouldn't expect a change like that, I'm sorry. But maybe if you can specify what you mean a little bit more by your question, I can get back to you. Justin Bishop asks, what games for PS3 have you covered, and would you recommend to play them? The two most notable games would have to be God of War 3 and Metal Gear Solid 4, and I would highly recommend both of those games, but only if you've played the previous installments. That goes for God of War and for Metal Gear Solid. You want to play 1 through 3 before you play 4, especially for Metal Gear Solid, because the fourth game was just a complete fan service game, and if you haven't played the other games, you're going to be completely lost. You're not going to have a clue what's going on, at least not as well as you should. And God of War 3 was a lot of fun, too. I think I prefer Metal Gear Solid 4 to the God of War series. That's not to say I don't like God of War. God of War is awesome, and I have yet to play Ascension. I still need to get to that. But I really haven't played a whole lot of PS3 games. My PS3 is just kind of collecting dust in the closet. There hasn't been a whole lot of exclusives that really interested me all that much, but there are a few that I really should go back and play as well as do LPs for, so that's something for the future. Sandro Chickfodzi asks, will you do a Witcher 3 LP when it comes out? Probably not, because I haven't done LPs of the previous two games. However, that is something that I may reserve to do in the future, because I have played them and I do enjoy them. Buckin5 asks, if you could build a dream Pokemon team with every Pokemon from every game, who would you have on your team and why would you have them on there? Well, really the only Pokemon I can speak for are the ones up through Gen 2, because I did not play anything past the second generation and I don't know anything about those Pokemon. I just know stuff from the first and second generation. So considering a standard party would be 6 Pokemon, I'll go through 6 Pokemon that I would say that I would probably put in my list. That's not to say that there aren't other Pokemon that I like, but I'll give you roughly what I would put in my top 6. First of all, I have Steelix, because I just think Steel-type Pokemon are pretty awesome. There's not very many of them, and they seem to not have a whole lot of weaknesses. So that makes them pretty powerful foes, and it's so far in my Pokemon Crystal Let's Play, Steelix is really the only Pokemon I fought that's put up a good fight. Second in my list would be Mewtwo. I can remember growing up, I went to go see the Pokemon movie, the original Pokemon movie, and I just thought Mewtwo was freaking awesome. I particularly like Psychic Pokemon. I just think, in general, they're really awesome Pokemon. Third would be Dragonite. I always liked the mystery of the dragon Pokemon. A lot of people in the show and in the games don't seem to have a lot of dragon Pokemon. And they just seem to be very sought-after Pokemon, and they're known for their strength, and they're just really strong, powerful Pokemon. And that's just why I like them. So I've decided to put Dragonite on my list for that reason. Fourth on my list would be Entei, a Fire-type legendary Pokemon from the second generation. I was always partial to Fire-type Pokemon as well. I just always thought they were really cool. So yeah, I would totally put Entei in my list. Number 5 would be Blastoise from the classic first generation. I mean, how can you go wrong with this Pokemon? He's freaking massive. He's got water cannons mounted on him. I feel like he could pretty much decimate anything. And finally on my list would be Zapdos, a legendary electricity Pokemon from the first generation. The main reason I picked this guy is just because he's an electricity type, and I think he's probably the coolest looking out of all of the electricity type Pokemon. I really like this design, and that's the main reason I picked this Pokemon. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks. Buckin5 asks 3 more questions. Number 1, what would you do if a zombie outbreak happens? Well, I'd probably get some weapons, get food, and try to get to as high a ground as possible because as far as I know, most zombies, if not all zombies, can't really go upstairs very easily. So if I can get pretty high up in a building, I should be okay, especially if I barricade some of the stairs with something. And I'd have to, of course, leave myself a path to get out, because if I ran out of food, I gotta go find more food. But yeah, I'd probably just live out my days wherever it is that I'm camping, just sniping zombies from the roof, just having a good old time. Buckin5 asks, has been the most difficult game to do a Let's Play for so far? Now, for this question, I actually had to go back and look through my list of LPs because I couldn't come up with an answer for it. But I really kind of have a split between 3 games, one of which was a series. The first one being the most difficult was probably Gears of War 1. Gears of War 2 was fairly challenging as well, but Gears of War 1 was the hardest, and the reason was because we were playing the game on insane difficulty. Well, I can remember playing it with Porkins, and there were a few points in the game, one of which I remember in particular, I ended up with about 15 minutes of footage after having recorded for about 2 hours. Because as many of you guys may know, I like to cut out most of my deaths because I don't find them all that interesting unless they add something to the game. So that was definitely the most difficult game that I've LP'd. The second most difficult, and it was a pretty close tie, was Dragon Age Origins. I actually found Dragon Age Origins to be incredibly difficult on the setting that I started with, which I think was just the normal setting. The game was a lot more difficult than I had initially expected it to be. And if I recall, I actually had to drop the difficulty at a few points during the game, just so I could stay alive. Buckin5 asks, are there any games you would refuse to do a Let's Play for? Well, there's really no games that I would object to simply for, like, moral reasons or anything. But there are lots of different types of games that I probably would not do an LP for because I'm not particularly interested in those types of games. 2 types would be racing games and sporting games, unless they're a little bit different, like Blood Bowl. What I've seen from Blood Bowl was pretty interesting. But I'm not a big fan of sports, and I'm also not a big fan of racing, so I tend to avoid those types of games altogether, whether it be Let's Plays or not. But one type of game that I would refuse to do a Let's Play for would be an MMO game. And I do get asked quite a bit if I would do videos for World of Warcraft or things like that. And I did actually do a few videos for Star Wars The Old Republic, right when that came out, but I probably would not do any more videos for anything like that, because the games don't really have a definite beginning and end, and in order to do a Let's Play, I need something that actually has a beginning and an end, so that I can actually finish it up. So I hope that answers your question, and thanks for the great questions. WM Pet Cowigzy asks, I have a double question for you. How and why did you first get into LPing, and what advice would you give to a LPer just starting out? Okay, so I first got into LPing back in 2009 when my friend Porkins was showing me some of the stuff online from various YouTubers. I can't even remember who they are now. But I thought it was an interesting idea, and being as big of a gamer as I was, I decided, well, I would pick up a capture card. So I went online and I bought a Dazzle. Many of you guys may know about Pinnacle's Dazzle. And he and I did our first LPs together, which were BioShock and Luigi's Mansion. And originally it was just Porkins and I. I would only actually do any recording at his house when I would go to visit him. But then later on I decided to start doing some for myself. And while I would have loved to have done every LP with Porkins, we weren't always around each other, so I felt I could get a lot more done if I just did them on my own. And I had a lot of games that I had a personal connection with, and I just wanted to show them off to you guys. So that was how I got my start. And to make a long story short, I ended up buying an HD PVR, a Hauppauge HD PVR, and that's how I record my console games. And I started doing that with Overlord 2. That was the first Let's Play that I started using that. And I was originally recording on Mac, and that was a pain in the ass, so I sold my Mac and I bought a PC, and I haven't even looked back since. And then basically LPing became a bit of an obsession for me. I spent lots of time working on it, as you can tell by my channel having over 3,000 videos. And I've just been working on it ever since, and the channel's been getting bigger and everything's been getting better, and there's a pretty bright future for LPing as far as I'm concerned. However, there is a bit of a dark side to it these days, and that kind of feeds into your second question of what advice would you give to a Let's Player just starting out. And really the best advice I can give is make sure you're doing it because you love it. Make sure you're actually passionate about the games that you're playing and that you have at least a little bit of an understanding of what's going on. Also, I recommend always capturing any game footage in the highest possible quality that you can. If you're not recording in at least 720p HD, I wouldn't even bother. And I know that may seem harsh, and I know some people may disagree with me, but there's just far too many people doing Let's Plays these days to do anything less than a 720p HD video. But breaking into LPing these days is extremely difficult because partners are taking on so many Let's Players that there's just an oversaturation of Let's Players in the YouTube market. And the problem with that is that people are throwing up videos a day or even 2 days before the release of the actual game, which some people get in trouble for and other people don't. But it makes it very difficult to produce videos for a new game and actually have them be seen by people because the front page for all the search results are always just flooded with tons of different Let's Players. I happened to break into LPing at a very good time because there were really not very many people doing it, and I managed to play a few games early on that just gave me a whole lot of success. I think I pulled in several thousand subscribers of my fan base overnight. Another piece of advice I can give is to make sure what you're producing is something that people are actually going to want to watch. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Let's Play. Since there's such an oversaturation of Let's Plays and walkthroughs, I would actually recommend that you try doing something a little bit different, and I think you'll find that you're a lot more successful just because of how many people are doing this nowadays. So try to take your gaming hobby or gaming passion and evolve it into something a little bit different. Just get creative with it. So I hope that answers your question. 212 Peaceman asks, why you stopped Kingdom Hearts? I actually didn't stop Kingdom Hearts, so I don't exactly know what you mean by this question. If you check the playlists for Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, all the videos should be in there. If you're referring to the handheld games, I probably won't be doing them anytime soon. I'm just not a really big fan of handheld consoles. D Ziggy MK asks, why don't you love me? Why? I do love you. I love all of my subscribers. Zach Young asks, will you do a God of War Ascension LP with Porkins? I would love to do a God of War Ascension LP with Porkins. Unfortunately, we don't really live close together, but maybe sometime in the near future we can get together and do a God of War Ascension LP. Mr. Santa 609 asks, would you be willing to do a playthrough of Dynasty Warriors 7 Empires? It's not that popular, and it combines a hack-and-slash game with the game Risk, basically. Probably not, and that's simply because hack-and-slash games really aren't that interesting to watch. I actually enjoy playing them quite a bit, but they don't make for very good LPs. A few years back, I did a walkthrough for 99 Nights, which is still on my channel. I thought it was a pretty entertaining game, but it did make for a very good Let's Play. 2Sean123 asks, detailed computer specs please. I'm running an Intel Core i7-3770K CPU at 3.5 GHz, and this is located in an ASRock motherboard. I've got 12 gigs of RAM, a GeForce GTX 670, 7 terabytes of internal storage space, and 3 terabytes of external storage space. And this is all enclosed into a Cooler Master half 932 case. Guckard asks, can I vlog with you sometime, LOL? Of course you can, Porkins. Just get that gaming computer set up and we'll get to it. Michael Sullivan asks, will your girlfriend be doing commentary with you again on a future Let's Play? Well, the girl that was in some of my earlier Let's Plays, we haven't been dating for well over a year. But I've been trying to get my my new girlfriend to join me in some commentaries, so there's a chance that she might show up at some point. Hidden Shinra Soldier asks, how much fun was it to do Gears and Gears 2 with Porkins? Do you guys ever plan on doing Gears 3 or the new one that's coming out at some point? I think I remember you saying something like your schedules don't match up for it, but I have bad memory, so who knows? Yes, I would love to do Gears of War 3 with Porkins. Unfortunately, I don't know when that's going to happen, just because of our different schedules and being in different places. Also, it's a console game. We have actually played it through together with split screen, and that's probably the only way I'm going to be able to record it is through split screen, and that's not going to look very good. But when we decide to do it, that's probably the way we're going to do it. But we will get to it eventually. Just wait. Patriotic Spartan asks, TehNevs, do you ever have like a game night where you invite friends to custom games on Halo 4 or Black Ops 2? If you do, I think it would be cool if you got us on YouTube involved. I actually don't do this at the moment. To be honest with you, I'm kind of an antisocial gamer. I tend to play a lot of single-player games and play them through by myself. However, I would really like to do something like this, and I may do it in the future, but right now my schedule is very sporadic, and I only have certain times of the day that I can really record. In some weeks, I'll have an entire week where I won't record anything at all. And I usually record things in large bursts where I'll spend several hours recording a session and then not record for several days. So it makes it kind of difficult for me to coordinate things like co-ops and online games like that, but it's something I may consider for the future. Angel Salas asks, what's your favorite part in the Kingdom Hearts story? Probably my favorite part in the games would have to be in number 2, where you fight 1,000 Heartless, just because I thought that was a really awesome, exciting part of the game. As well as the final battle of the second game was an extremely interesting fight with multiple stages and just a lot of excitement. However, my favorite Kingdom Hearts game would have to still be the first one, even though the second one probably had some of my favorite moments. Just because of the charm of the first one, it was really just introducing the series, and it wasn't as full-blown of an action game as the second one was. So yeah, those would have to be my favorite 2 parts of the game, so hopefully that answers your question. Donatus Pakelis asks, I would like to ask, did you ever play on Battle.net via Warcraft 3, and if yes, then what and how much fun did you have? Also, how does it feel like to have made more than 3,000 separate videos? Thanks. I did actually play a fair bit of Warcraft 3 on Battle.net back in the day. I haven't done much of it recently, but I actually spent more time playing custom games than I did actually playing real matches, because some of the custom matches were just really creative and interesting. My personal favorite custom map was Kodo Tag, for anyone that's played something like it. It was just very fast-paced, had funny dialogue and funny music, and just really exciting game. And also, to answer the second part to your question, it feels pretty good to have made 3,000 videos. I mean, I feel like I've contributed a lot to the YouTube recording community, and I still feel like I have a lot more to give, so we're going to keep this going as long as I possibly can, or until I feel that recording games just isn't interesting or worth doing to me anymore. As long as I still have a passion for gaming, I'll probably always be doing these game recordings. 3 Sammy King asks, TehNevs, I've been a huge fan for a very long time. I'm a rookie Let's Player and was wondering, how long did it take you before you took off into having so many subscribers? Well, actually, I think I made about half of my subscribers seemingly overnight, with a couple of really successful Let's Plays that I did back in the day before Let's Playing became something that everyone and their mother did. But those games were Alien vs. Predator and Assassin's Creed 2, both of which I no longer have on the channel. I may go back and redo Assassin's Creed 2 at some point, but basically they just turned up really high in the search list because nobody else was doing them, and just kind of took off from there. I believe I got several thousand subscribers in just a week. And from about the 8,000 subscriber point, I've just steadily gone up over time by producing lots of content and trying to tag them in such ways that people will be able to find them and appreciate the content that I've produced. Chris Timos asks, anything? Yes, anything. Rollins1212Q asks, why you keep playing the same 2 games? Well, I usually have 1 or 2 Let's Plays going at a time, and I like to try to finish the game before I start another one, because I've had a few times where I've started so many Let's Plays that I just wasn't even able to finish them all, and that's just no fun. Nobody wants to sit down and start watching a Let's Play and not see the entire Let's Play. I believe I still have maybe 1 or 2 incomplete walkthroughs on the channel, but typically if I think I'm not going to finish a game, I'll just delete it, so that way people won't find it and get irritated when they watch through half the series and then not see the ending. So that's why I do it. Jeremy Stevens asks, what game of 2013 are you most excited for, and what's your favorite custom game on Battle.net for Warcraft 3? Well, I don't usually keep up with a lot of the game hype, so I'm not really sure totally what's coming out this year, but I believe The Last Guardian from Team Ico, the same guys that made Shadows of the Colossus, and the Ico game are going to be releasing that this year. I'm definitely excited to play Last Guardian, as well as the new Metal Gear game that's supposed to be coming out this year. And I've also heard that in April they're releasing a director's cut of Deadly Premonition, and for anyone that hasn't seen my Deadly Premonition walkthrough, I'd highly recommend you go and watch it, because it really is, in my opinion, one of those gem of a games. Extremely quirky, not for everybody, but I thoroughly enjoyed that game, and I'm really excited to see that they're releasing a director's cut that has updated controls as well as some new plot points. And to answer your second question, my favorite custom game, which I stated in one of the previous questions, was Kodo Tag. If you haven't played Kodo Tag, that's a very good one. Ezio Altair AC asks, will you play the DLC for AC3? I know you didn't like the game, but Ubisoft fixed combat and actually made the gameplay more interesting and fun. Probably not, because I don't usually play DLC. I don't really support the concept of DLC. Some developers make good DLC, kind of like the guys that made Alan Wake's American Nightmare. But for the most part, I find DLC is just overpriced for the content that you receive for it. And it really pisses me off when developers make DLC to actually finish the story of the game, as we saw with Azura's Wrath. It really pisses me off when developers do that, and I don't typically support DLC. Reed Depew asks, what game was a favorite of yours so far, and also what game for 2013 will you favorite to do a full LP of? It's hard for me to pick just one game that has been my favorite to do an LP of so far, but I'd probably say the more nostalgic series have been a lot more fun for me to do, like the Warcraft 3 videos as well as the current going Age of Empires 2 videos. I'm really able to just relive my childhood gaming through you guys, which is really cool. And I'm glad to see lots of people are watching it. I've actually had more hits on those videos than a lot of the modern games like Bioshock Infinite, as well as the Kingdom Hearts series, which was another nostalgic one that's probably been one of my more successful Let's Plays, as well as one of my favorites to make, and I'm glad to see people are enjoying it. I can't really answer your second question because I don't exactly know all the games that are coming out this year. I don't usually keep up with hype. I just kind of wait for things to come out and then give them a try. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens later in the year. Flying Squirrel 996 asks, what software do you use for editing your videos? I use Sony Vegas version 9.0C, which seems to work very well with Fraps. Austin Ludwig asks, can you do Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep? It's something I've considered doing, but I'm not really a big fan of handheld consoles, as I said in a previous question, so I probably won't be doing it anytime soon. I'm really just waiting for the big Kingdom Hearts 3. Dan M608 asks, are you planning on doing Crysis 3 or Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance? There's a possibility of Crysis 3, maybe, but I haven't actually played any of the Crysis games, even though I do own the first two. I found the controls to be a little hectic, and I couldn't really get into the game. But if I ever go back and decide to record the first two, then maybe I'll record the third one too. And to answer your second question, I've actually played through Metal Gear Rising. I was not a huge fan of it. I thought it was okay, coming from someone that enjoys hack and slash games. But it really didn't have that Metal Gear feel to it, in my opinion. It had some of that, but it was just a little weird for me. Also, I'm probably not going to record it, simply because I've had a lot of issues with Konami posting video footage of their games. They've hit me with a lot of copyright issues in the past, so I'm probably not going to record any more of their games in the future. Which is a shame, because I love Metal Gear. I love the series, I love everything about it, but they just give me a lot of crap, so I can't record their games. 123 Dave Man asks, what's your favorite game you have played through so far? Well, I just answered this one a couple of questions ago, but I'll answer it again. Probably the Kingdom Hearts games or my current running RTS series, including Warcraft 3 and the Age of Empires 2 games, because they're all just so very nostalgic for me, and I used to play those 3 games more than just about any other game. Gaming Toneberry asks, what was your favorite game growing up? It's a pretty tough question. I played a lot of games from the Nintendo 64 on, but probably the games I'm playing right now, which are Age of Empires and Warcraft 3, I probably spent more time playing those than just about any other game. So I'd say those were probably my favorite ones growing up. Do you own and or play any of the old school consoles? I actually do not own any of the old school consoles anymore. I think I may have some of my N64 game cartridges still, but I don't have the actual consoles. They all broke on me. But I've considered hooking up into an emulator and recording some old N64 games, because that's really how I got my start in gaming, was with the Nintendo 64. What's your opinion on COD gameplay and mechanics leaking into other popular franchises? Well, I really don't have any issue with companies ripping off each other, because, like, if someone comes up with a really great mechanic, there's no reason why another developer shouldn't use that great mechanic. except add their own twist to it. I don't like it when there's a game that just directly copies the game itself, because that's no fun. There's nothing new to it. But I can't think of a particular franchise that has actually been ruined by this concept. Maybe you can give me an example, because I can't think of any. I guess you could argue that Dead Space 3 was a little more action-oriented than the previous two games, but I still think it maintained a good horror element to it. And finally, how many cups of sugar does it take to get to the moon? 7,827,641.5. Alessandro Roman asks, what are your thoughts on the new PS4? I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it. I mean, I expected the next generation of consoles to come around this time, and I'm excited to see another generation of consoles. I don't know if I'm going to buy into them immediately. I may wait a little while to see if there's any issues like there was with the Red Ring of Death sort of thing with the Xbox 360, because sometimes these consoles are made very cheaply in order to fit into the market. But my current PS3 is just kind of collecting dust in the closet. I don't usually play it that much. I prefer the Xbox 360 controller, and that's the main reason I stick to using an Xbox over a PS3. While I do believe that the PS3 is a superior system, I find that it just didn't have as many exclusive games that I was interested in. And being a fan of the Xbox controller, I tend to just stick to playing it, so I don't really use my PS3 much. I really should dust off my PS3 and try recording some games like the Uncharted series, and I may get to doing that sometime in the near future. So yeah, not a lot of thoughts on the new PS4. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be cool. Damon Katumaru asks, favorite LPers? To be honest with you, I've never really watched a lot of Let's Plays. I watched a few just to kind of understand what the concept was, and from there I've just kind of been producing my own content. I don't usually have much time to actually sit and watch a lot of Let's Plays. But that being said, there have been a few that I've watched over the years, so I'll give you a couple of names so you guys can go check these people out. Probably my favorite Let's Player would have to be Delindow3000. He only has about 4,000 subscribers at the moment, and you really should go check this guy out if you're at all a fan of the old school puzzle type games, as well as adventure games. He goes into extreme depth with every single game. He's extremely knowledgeable. He's got a great voice for it, and anytime there's books and things incorporated into the games that he's playing, he'll actually stop and read them all for you. But just the sheer amount of knowledge that this guy has about every game that he does is really interesting to me. You can tell that he put a lot of time into studying the game and really understanding all the mechanics and showing you everything there is to know about the game. And I wish I had as much patience as he did to actually go through and learn everything there is to know about every game that I Let's Play. But a lot of the times I like to do first impression type recordings. Probably the most notable series that I've seen from him was of the Riven and Mist series. He's done some great videos for those, and those were games that me and my father used to play a lot back in the day. Also, I highly recommend his Lost Journey Let's Play if you like adventure games. The Lost Journey one is really nice. But he's the main one that I've actually watched. I haven't actually completed a lot of people's Let's Plays as far as watching them goes. I've watched a few from Scorch82. I'm sure some of you guys know who he is, because we used to be pretty closely connected back in the day. Also recommend for horror games, Halloween 4545. He's done some very interesting Let's Plays of some awesome horror games, so I definitely would check that one out since I'm a big fan of horror games. Leo8Z8B asks, how old are you? Currently 22, 23rd birthday is coming up in about 4 months. Chase Iron the Dwarf asks, what is your favorite food? I'm not a very picky eater. I like just about anything you feed me. But I do eat a lot of Mexican food, because we have some nice local Mexican restaurants that serve margaritas. I like to have the occasional margarita when I'm eating dinner. Also, it's cheap, and I'm a college kid, poor college kid, so gotta get some cheap food, and Mexican's fairly cheap. But I like just about anything. Probably Italian would be another big one that I enjoy. So hopefully that is a sufficient answer to your question. Thanks. Got Gypped asks, have you thought of streaming shows like special events? If so, what kind of games would you be likely to stream? I haven't thought about doing it simply because the internet connection in my apartment is pretty abysmal as far as upload speed goes, and everything would look grainy and choppy and look like crap. But maybe after college, when I've got a home and I've got a decent internet connection that I'm paying for, I can work with that. But right now, I just kind of have to work with what I've got. Anthony P. asks, will you do any Final Fantasy walkthrough like 1 through 12? I'm actually quite a big fan of the Final Fantasy games, and I'd thought about doing them, but there's a lot of good Let's Plays out there currently for them, so I'd have to come up with my own spin on it to make it unique. But there's actually some old school RPGs I've been considering doing before doing something like Final Fantasy. And I'm not going to reveal what those are yet, because there's a good possibility that I'm going to start doing one before too long. But first, I really want to finish up these current long-term Let's Plays that I'm working on, like Pokemon and the Age of Empires games. 75 Thunder Monkey asks, is there anything you miss from your childhood that isn't around anymore, or just hard to get if you happen to find it? Now, I actually had to think about this question for a little while, because I can't really come up with a very good answer for it. If you're talking specifically about games, it's really not the case, because typically I can play just about any game I would want to play, with the use of things like emulation. But one game that I'd really like to play that is difficult for me to play would be the Perfect Dark, the original Perfect Dark for the N64. I've tried to get that to run via emulator, and it just does not run very well. So that's a game I definitely would like to play and miss being able to play, and can't really play at the moment because I don't have an N64. King Cryptar asks, how old are you and what was your first LP? I am currently 22, as I stated in a previous question. And my first Let's Play was actually Bioshock that I did with my friend Porkins. And that Let's Play is still located on my channel. You can go back and watch it and see how much my videos have changed since then. Alec Ingayan asks, you like bananas? Yes, I love bananas. Aaron Wright asks, will you be doing a Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes Let's Play when it comes out? Most likely not, simply because of what I stated in a previous question about Konami giving me a lot of crap. And I really don't want to risk my account. It's not worth it. Alright guys, so that was all the questions. There were a few that I cut out simply because the question either didn't make sense or I couldn't come up with a good answer for it. And there were a lot of duplicates in there, people asking me the same question. I think I even answered some of those anyway. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this first Q&A session. I'm sorry it took me so long to put this out. I think it's been like 2 months since I actually made the post. But I was really trying to do this on camera, but I'm just having a lot of issues with my camera recording properly. And I just didn't want to risk spending lots of time recording it and just having it not work. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you'd like to see me do another one in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.